Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blank and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
All right, you ready, Jack? So cooler. Hello and welcome to the GSMC Television Podcast. We're part of the mighty GSMC Podcast Network, and I'm your masked and ready to go host, Howard Fletcher, and I'm joined once again by my trusted engineer, Jack the Black Pug, and we are positively honored and thrilled and excited to be here with you once again. If you're new to the show, I'd like to give you a very, very warm welcome. Thank you for giving us a try. We appreciate you choosing to spend some time with us today. We know there's a myriad of media that you can choose from out there. I always bring this up, and we are honored that you have chosen to spend some of that time with us. We aim to please, so stick around. I'm sure you'll hear something that you like. That's what I hope. That's what I'm working on. And we want to keep you coming back. And if you're one of our loyal return listeners, you know how we feel about you. You're truly the reason that I'm here. You're the reason Jack's here. So let's all have some fun today. We have another jam-packed show for you today. It looks like I'm going to be able to say I told you so again. I know it's obnoxious. Sorry, not sorry. Tony Danza and Alyssa Milano are going to make a bold return to the little screen. There are more shakeups at NBC Universal. Lena Waithe keeps getting jobs. She gets jobs and more jobs. And I'm going to tell you about another job she got. And I will be bringing you news as it breaks because you know I love breaking news. And who knows what's up with the Batman universe at HBO Max. But first, let's get started with some breaking LNDGS news. Now, this is a story I told you I would update as information pours in. Not all of this information I'm going to tell you right now is new, but, you know, I need to review some for new listeners who aren't up on this story, but there have been a few nuggets that have come out in the last couple of days. As the Ellen DeGeneres show winds down its summer hiatus, producers this week started the process of reviewing with staff accounts of workplace misconduct on the popular daytime talk series. The reports of bad behavior on the set are currently being investigated by Warner Media. As an increasing number of allegations come to light, questions are mounting as to how DeGeneres' very lucrative talk show and carefully crafted public persona will be affected. Senior creatives and producers are back at work this week, with the 140 or so personnel at Ellen gradually returning in stages following the break. The investigation is still ongoing. As I reported on this podcast last week, series producer, Telepictures, and distributor Warner Brothers Television informed staff that Warner Media's employee relations group and a third-party firm would interview current and former staffers about their on-set experiences. The probe comes in the wake of several reports of mistreatment and misconduct, including a mid-July BuzzFeed News investigation that surfaced allegations of racist behavior and intimidation on the show. In April, I shared a Variety.com report about the outrage among the show's crew members over pay reduction, a lack of communication, and poor treatment by producers after the pandemic shut down production. A non-union tech company was hired to tape the show remotely from DeGeneres' California home. Last week, a separate BuzzFeed News report emerged that included dozens of former employees alleging sexual misconduct and harassment by top executives on the show. The new season of Ellen is scheduled to premiere on September 9th. Another show that DeGeneres hosts, Game of Games, on NBC is headed back into production on the week of August 24th. Although, according to those familiar with the situation, it is still undetermined as to whether there will be a studio audience during taping. How this recent report, or the recent reports, will impact Ellen's viewership in the fall remains to be seen. Now, here's a quote. What makes it difficult is the kind of crisis this is. This is not an acute problem, such as harassment or by DeGeneres herself or embezzlement, said Ketchum. Now, Ketchum is a company that does consulting. Senior Vice President of Issues and Crisis Management, Andrew Mosel. He continues, it's more of a challenge to her entire brand ethos, which is a friendly, relatable person next door, which is really the way that viewers perceive her and her value as an entertainer. Now that's key at the end when he said her value as an entertainer, because Ellen pulls down cash, and if suddenly her brand loses value, there may be a problem. The allegations, quote, create a sizable crack in the impression of her as a friendly next-door neighbor that you're spending your afternoon with, he said. Given the popularity of the long-running show, some publicists say DeGeneres' core fan base is unlikely to stop tuning in because of recent reports, though only time will tell whether the negative publicity will sour more casual viewers. DeGeneres' public persona as a talk show host has been built on the premise, quote, be kind to one another, end quote. When Ellen won the Daytime Emmy in June for Best Entertainment Talk Show, DeGeneres said in her acceptance speech that she would more actively use her show as a way to create change and amplify the voices of Black people and people of color. Following the recent spate of headlines, DeGeneres issued an emotional apology letter to staff last week that the show was not the, quote, place of happiness, end quote, that she promised it would be, and said that she was, quote, disappointed to learn that this has not been the case, end quote. Executive producer Ed Glavin is expected to exit his role. So I guess Ellen put Ed Glavin's head on the block and said, you got to go. Entertainment publicist Danny Derenay said that he has been hearing stories of DeGeneres' alleged behavior for years, including from those who have worked on her show. Quote, here's a quote. I think Ellen has had a problem with reading the room lately, he said in reference to DeGeneres broadcasting from her sizable home amid the pandemic and calling self-quarantine a quote-unquote prison, and the criticism she received after photos surfaced of her attending an NFL game with former President George W. Bush a year ago. Quote, she has an image problem that clearly is going to need some work to salvage any kind of momentum that she has earned over this time or any kind of positive reputation that she has, said Deraney. There's a lot of negativity surrounding her and her show, and the change will start by her offering a better apology and taking ownership of what she's done and really being better, end quote. Well, like they said earlier in the article, time will tell, but I disagree with Deraney. I think if just she goes back to business as usual and nothing else that comes up, that she'll be fine. Most of the reports that I've read and the accounts that I've read have not involved Ellen directly, and I do not believe that, contrary to the opinion of this gentleman here, I don't think the audience holds it against her that she's been successful and has a big house, or that she's not happy about having to stay in her house. So I disagree. I think people see her as a real person. And, just because you got more money doesn't mean you don't have more problems. So I will keep you abreast of the trials and tribulations of Ellen DeGeneres and the Ellen DeGeneres Show as they come in. Here is some breaking movie theaters influx news. Cinema giant Cinemark is not game for the reduced 17-day theatrical window that fellow exhibitor, AMC Theaters and Universal Pictures, recently struck an agreement for, Cinemark CEO Mark Zoradi said Tuesday. Here's a quote. "We believe an exclusive theatrical window is critically important," he said. "While we have publicly stated we're willing to have conversations with our studio partners to evolve with them, we are mindful that an overly aggressive shortened theatrical window could have an adverse impact on the mid to tail end of a film's life," Zoradi told analysts on Tuesday when they released their second quarter earnings to the public. The Cinemark boss said he would negotiate with the major studios about shortening the theatrical window. Quote, "We'll be very careful and methodical about how we approach any change to the theatrical windows. We continue to analyze carefully and research this matter, and we will endeavor to ensure any modifications that are in the best interests of the overall industry, our company, and our shareholders," end quote. At the same time, Zoradi would not be drawn on how many days would not constitute an overly aggressive shortened theatrical window that he warned against, adding that he would leave that discussion to direct talks with studios. Zoradi added the major studios weren't suddenly ramping up negotiations to collapse the theatrical window. Quote, "I wouldn't say there's been any aggressive new discussions that we are in the middle of. I would characterize it as ongoing," he told analysts. But he again gave little away on the nature of the talks. Here's another quote. "We are open and active with discussions, but relative to negotiations, I would stop there," Zoradi said. Man, this guy. Again, now I used to give AMC heck, and I'm going to give Cinemark heck, because he is just trying to put off the inevitable, and the inevitable is that you're going to have to negotiate with these studios, and you're going to have to close this theatrical window. That's all. And while I know these theaters don't like giving up that control, they must realize that if the movies are popular, the studios will leave the films in there. They get more money from ticket sales than they're going to get from putting it on video on demand or on streaming. But if that revenue stream is dry, they want to move the movie on. I think it helps both sides. The historic AMC Universal agreement will allow the studio's movies to be made available on premium video on demand after just 17 days of play in cinemas, including 3 weekends. That shatters the traditional theatrical window of nearly 3 months before studios can make movies available in the home. It initially covers AMC's U.S. locations, but the two partners will also discuss a potential international rollout. AMC, the world's largest theater chain, will share in the revenue from the video on demand, but the two sides haven't disclosed financial details. NBC Universal CEO Jeff Schnell last week called the AMC partnership groundbreaking, reiterating that video on demand was a complement rather than a replacement for a robust theatrical release. He commended AMC and CEO Adam Aron for their vision and that, quote, "Together we can build a new, more attractive business model for us both," end quote. Shell also signaled that Universal was hoping to reach similar deals with other exhibitors. Wall Street has been debating the impact of the AMC Universal agreement on studios and cinema chains. MoffettNathanson, which is a consulting firm, analyst Michael Nathanson, called the development, quote, "a groundbreaking moment for the film industry." But he also said, "We worry that the near-term impact on attendance can be more substantial, and consumers in the long run will continue to opt to watch more non-blockbuster films in their homes going forward. Of course, the lower box office attendance will also negatively impact high-margin per cap spending on food and beverages," end quote. And that last sentence is the whole crux of the matter, or as my friend Sam used to say, the whole crust of the matter. The deal is that exhibitors want to be able to sell those expensive concessions. That's all. And even if they have a theater that's half full, if people buy those concessions, the profit margin on them is so high that they make their money. Now, I understand them being upset that opportunity is going away, but that opportunity is going away. I don't think there's anything they can do about that. And I think more and more theaters are going to be a place for tentpole movies that are big deal movies. Other than that, the mid to small movies are going to be all video on demand and streamed. That's just a change in the marketplace. And I will probably talk about this one more time because of another story coming up, but I hope I can talk about this all day, as listeners of this podcast know, but I won't. Next, I'm going to talk about Lena Waithe. She's preparing to get another project together that I'll tell you about in typical Lena Waithe fashion. It's a little bit outside the box, something new, and let's discuss it. I'm going to take a break here. You can take a break. We're going to pay some bills, and I'll be right back. Thanks for listening. Keep about to get creative, Jack. About this virus. About to get creative. All right, we're back, and we're going to talk a little bit about Lena Waithe. Lena Waithe is preparing another project at Amazon Studios. The prolific writer-producer who signed a deal with the streamer in 2019 just finished a draft of a pilot script on open relationships, which is now being developed for series. Quote, "I've never been in an open marriage, but it's fascinating to me," Waithe told The Hollywood Reporter. "We live in a world where if I told you I cheated on my wife, you would be like, yeah, that's the way it goes. But if I told you that I'm in an open marriage, it would be as if I told you I was joining the Church of Scientology." End quote. Well, if you're a Scientologist, you might not be shocked by that, but I don't know. It would raise my eyebrow. Should it go forward, Open, that's the working title, she didn't have to think long about that, would be something of a first. The subject of non-traditional marriages has somehow yet to find its way onto mainstream TV, though Ryan Murphy attempted a project on the subject at HBO in 2014. Waithe and her Hillman Grad Productions shingle are working on several projects under her Amazon pact. First up will be a horror anthology series, Them Covenant. Those of you who listen to the podcast know I am a horror anthology fan, so let's see if Them Covenant brings the noise. The first season of the series, written by Little Marvin, I don't know Little Marvin, like his name, follows a black couple and their move to an all-white Los Angeles neighborhood where the picturesque streets mask malevolent forces, both real and supernatural. Sounds like my old neighborhood. Waithe, The Hollywood Reporter picked her as TV Producer of the Year, adds her Amazon slate to an already substantial TV portfolio, which includes Showtime's The Chi and BET's Boomerang and 20s. Her growing empire also means producing more beyond just projects of her own creation. Quote, "My mission is to provide a space for people to grow," says Waithe, while making work that people can look at and say, that broke a barrier, end quote. Well, I'll say this. Let me see. I'm neutral on Lena Waithe right now. I loved her in Westworld as her, her turn as an actress. I've watched The Chi before, and I liked the first season a lot. And something was pretty disturbing on the first episode of the second season to me that I thought was a little over the top, that concerned some violence against a senior citizen. So I didn't watch any more of that. And trust me, I watch all kinds of violence. I just thought that violence was unnecessary. And so it turned me away from the show. It's gotten some great reviews. I like the fact that, again, as I say about a lot of productions on prestige television nowadays, I'm very happy to see those actors on the show have work, especially the black actors that are on The Chi. But I stopped watching that. And I haven't watched her other things. I will watch Them Covenant because I give every horror anthology a try. and I hope this one delivers. What I was going to say about Lena Waithe is just like she said she wants to. She makes TV that wants to break barriers. I think she does do that. You know, sometimes, and it looks like at least the one, including The Chi, I think that even though I'm a Wire fan, and I think The Chi was kind of trying to be The Wire too, it just wasn't as good as The Wire. I think that there's something to be said about breaking a barrier with good material and just breaking a barrier just to say you broke it. So we'll see how Open is. Open might be a very good, hopefully it is. I'm looking forward to it being a great dramatic series, but I hope it's just not, you know, a story about an open marriage just to say that, okay, well, we broke that barrier. So we'll see what happens. Should it go, Open will be her first new series since 20s with Waithe as a credited writer. Here's another quote. Society has had such a conservative way of looking at marriage, Waithe said of Open. I do think that we as a nation need to reevaluate what marriage looks like for us as a country because whatever we have right now, it ain't working, end quote. Well, I agree with her conclusion. I don't agree with her solution necessarily. I've never been in an open relationship or open marriage, so I can't say, I don't think it would be for me, but, you know, hey, and I know people who are in those relationships, and I have no judgment. If it works for them, fine. I guess you should know yourself. That's where I think the problem is. Not so much whether you get married or you remain single all the time or whatever your sexual proclivity is, it's as long as you know who you are. I think a lot of times people fight that battle and that bleeds over into their relationships. GSMC has a relationship podcast and a sex podcast. This is neither of those. So I'll stop getting in their territory and I'll go back to the television podcast with some breaking NBC Universal news. NBC Universal is stepping up efforts to reorganize its top leadership structure with the goal of streamlining content and programming operations as it prepares for significant layoffs across the company. At the same time, NBCU is poised to launch an investigation into allegations that NBC Entertainment Chairman Paul Telegdi, who I've spoken of before on this podcast, has made racist, sexist, and homophobic statements and questionable behaviors that have alienated some employees. Paul Telegdi, 4'3". That dude is, well, we'll see. It's under investigation. I don't want to, allegedly, that dude is a 3-point threat. Multiple sources close to the situation say that Bella Baharia, Netflix's VP of Local Language Origins and an NBCU alumnus, was approached within the last month by senior NBCU executives about taking a job that would have involved oversight of the NBC broadcast network as well as other cablers in the NBCU fold, including USA Network, Sci-Fi, and Bravo. Baharia is understood to have turned down the overture. She declined to comment on the matter late Monday. Now, this shows a power shift in the industry, if you ask me. I mean, this is like, let's say, this is like if you were to, what they were doing was asking her to quit SpaceX to go work for Amtrak again. She's like, no, I am not leaving Netflix to go back to NBCU, especially when you have these problems. But further than that, or even more importantly, she's worked for the king of streaming right now. This is where the industry is going. She doesn't want to go back to NBCU, in my opinion. Well, she didn't go back. I think those are the reasons. She probably has her own and probably better reasons than my little reasons. The approach to Baharia underscores the focus of newly appointed NBCU Chief Executive Jeff Shell on streaming content and programming operations. Particularly on the cable side, NBCU is under pressure to cut costs as the once robust market for ad-supported cable channels starts to shrink amid cord cutting and the rise of subscription and free streaming services. Telegdi has been under pressure for months amid public complaints about his behavior from Gabrielle Union, a former judge on the NBC talent competition series America's Got Talent. On July 31st, The Hollywood Reporter reported that numerous NBCU insiders, past and present, have accused Telugu and others in his inner circle of making offensive and boorish statements. I love that word, boorish. I don't like the fact that he made those statements, but I think it's a great word. In addition to allegations that Telugu at times put undue pressure on NBC talent, including union. Telugu has been with NBC since 2008. He rose to head of alternative programming in 2011, and he was promoted to co-chairman of NBC Entertainment in September of 2018. Last October, Telugu went solo as former co-chair George Cheeks exited NBCU for the top job at CBS. Within NBC Universal, discussions are taking place this week to determine who will oversee that investigation, what form it'll take, and what's the timetable. Those decisions, a source has told Variety.com, are likely to be finalized within the next few weeks. NBCU is expected to significantly streamline much of its TV programming, marketing and distribution operations into central groups that serve multiple networks. The cable side of NBCU first began moving slowly in that direction in early 2016, when Hammer tapped Bill McGoldrick to oversee scripted content for the NBCU Cable Entertainment Channels group. The volume of pink slips is still unclear, but it's expected to be significant. NBCU chief Shell has been vocal to Wall Street that the company needs to adjust its cost base and ensure that the company's risks are right-sized for the current environment. NBCU's TV units and theme parks divisions are expected to see some of the deepest cuts. So, why is this on the TV podcast? Well, for those of you who listen to me a lot, you figured it out, but this is on here because this shows where the industry is going. NBC Universal used to be the big cat on the block. I mean, as network or broadcast TV moved into cable, of the three major broadcast networks, that's CBS, NBC, and ABC, NBC was the strongest. And then when it merged with Universal, that made them really big. And they were thought to be probably, well, everybody goes down, everything goes in cycles, but they were in pretty good, stable territory. Then we got into the digital age and streaming came along and, first very diverse cable came along and they found themselves competing with people like HBO and Showtime. But now with the streaming services making their own original content, they're really in a cage match, as to use a terminology that was used last podcast. So, and they're also saddled with theme parks, just like Disney. They're saddled with having to figure out how you deal with these very expensive theme parks with significant assets that they have invested in, and people aren't going, or you're not going to be able to expect the same volume of people to go. What do you do? So they have a lot of stuff on their balance sheet, on their expense side of their balance sheet, that they're going to need to have to deal with. And unfortunately, that includes human assets. That includes some of their personnel. So they're going to get lean and mean. And, some of this stuff is going to be probably pared down into little development teams that make shows that go under the Peacock. So we'll see how it goes. But that, and the fact I also wanted to bring to everyone's attention out there, the fact that this woman who used to be in management at NBC Universal, who left for Netflix, was offered a big promotion because she was going to pretty much run a whole division at NBC Universal, and turned it down. Now she being Bella Baharia, is running local language originals, which means she's getting original content from different parts of the world, which is, a really cool job. And that's why Netflix is king. I see why she she turned down that job, even if she was offered, she's probably offered somewhat of a raise, but probably a bunch of stock, which probably is not going to be worth as much in a year or so. And she probably looked at that as well. So, that's what's going on at NBC Universal. I'll keep you posted on that. But next, I'm going to talk about some news that came over the wire late last night. And it has to do with the movies. And it has to do with, I'll tell you, it has to do with Mulan. And it was surprising to me. Even though I have to say I told you so, I didn't tell you exactly this. This is big. I'll be back with that after this. We're going to pay some bills, go get some a good stiff drink or some edibles or something. And I'll be right back. Don't go away.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Yep. I told him, Jack. Coming around. We'll see. All right. I'm going to pat myself in the back a little bit in this segment. Hope that doesn't bother too many of you guys. Disney and Mulan. That's what we're going to talk about. Even amid a pandemic that has battered major parts of its business, including theme parks and studio entertainment, Disney flexed the power of its streaming service Tuesday, releasing whopper subscriber figures and announcing that its tentpole film, Mulan, will, go straight to Disney Plus next month. Disney Plus now has over 60.5 million paying subscribers as of last month, just 9 months after the launch of the direct-to-consumer streaming platform, and after several delays to its theatrical release date. Disney CEO Bob Chapek said that Mulan will premiere on the service on a premiere access basis on September 4th for $29.99. The film will be released theatrically in markets in which access to the movie on Disney Plus is not available. Now, I don't know what markets those are. I guess he means internationally. But I told you this movie. Now, I thought that they may hold out, but I don't think they have as much faith in Mulan as Warner has in Tenet, and they probably shouldn't. Also, because Mulan is going to attract probably a younger audience, they realize that, look, parents aren't going to want to take their kids out to see this movie in a theater. So we might as well do what we can, and they're going to sell it to them for $29.99, and they can watch it in the comfort of their homes. Chapek was quick to emphasize that the call with analysts that the Mulan release on Disney Plus is a one-time event. Okay, now Chapek's going to say, y'all don't get used to this because this is just an odd situation. And it is an unusual situation. However, let's see how much money they make off Mulan first before he starts saying this is just a one-time thing. Here's a quote. "We find it very interesting to take a premiere offering to consumers at that $29.99 price and learn from it," said Chapek, noting that they would study the number of transactions and the number of subscribers generated by the movie. That's what I just said. If they make a bunch of money on this price off of a movie and it's worth it to them, this isn't going to be just a one-time thing. And I'm telling you, if the practice of going to movies isn't going to be what it used to be, this is going to be regular practice. He said that the premiere access window created on Disney Plus for Mulan acts as a, quote, fairly large stimulus, end quote, for new consumers to sign up for the streaming service. Well, they got a bunch of signups because of Hamilton. I didn't sign up, but they got a bunch of them because I know people who signed up just to see Hamilton. And if the demand for Mulan is what they anticipated in the theater, then they're quite right. And if this, now I know they have problems with internet in China, but if this can help stimulate more interest in China, in other words, people will go to greater lengths to get bootleg broadband so they can watch Mulan, that might happen. Who knows? Between Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus, the company has surpassed 100 million in global video-on-demand subscribers. That's made the company even more confident about our future and encouraged them to be more aggressive with programming. During the last earnings call, Disney reported 54.5 million worldwide subscribers. Chapek highlighted the 15 Emmy nominations earned by the service's flagship live-action Star Wars series, The Mandalorian. Hulu's total subscribers have reached 35.5 million as of June 27th, up 27% from the year-ago quarter. Of those subscribers, 3.4 million take the video-on-demand Hulu service as well as the Hulu Live virtual video premium on-demand service, whatever that means. Hulu Live subscriptions are up from 2.2 million in the year-ago timeframe. ESPN Plus now has 8.5 million subscribers. Wow. That's surprising to me. Not that, hey, it's a decent product, I guess. I didn't think that people were going to pay necessarily for ESPN Plus. Must be the soccer. It's probably the soccer. Disney plans to launch an international direct-to-consumer general entertainment offering under the Star brand in calendar year 2021. Chapek said it would draw content from Disney-owned ABC Studios, FX, Freeform, 20th Century Studios, and Searchlight, among other Disney assets. At this stage of the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, the company's direct-to-consumer and international segment is the only division that generated year-over-year revenue growth during the quarter, rising 2% to $4 billion. Now, let me repeat at least part of that. The company's direct-to-consumer and international segment is the only division that generated year-over-year revenue growth. So, it's streaming, folks. The unit delivered an operating loss of about $706 million, which was $200 million less of a loss than previously forecast, thanks to the growth of Disney Plus and Hulu. Now, why was there that big number loss and they're thinking it's a success? Because they had to outlay a ton of money to get Disney Plus up and running. Also, by buying all that stuff from Marvel and buying all that stuff from Lucasfilms. So they're doing okay. Meanwhile, the normally lucrative parks, experiences, and consumer products segment saw revenue plummet 85% to $1 billion, while studio entertainment revenue sank 55% to $1.7 billion. Media network segment revenue slipped 2% to $6.6 billion. Disney's direct-to-consumer offering is a top priority and key to the future of the company, Chapek said on the call. In the company's fiscal third quarter earnings, total revenue plummeted 40% to $11.7 billion, and diluted per share earnings sank 94% to 8 cents. Okay, so as we were talking about NBC Universal in the last segment, what's pulling Disney's value down as a company are these parks, because people aren't going. They can't go a lot of times, because of just where they're located is shut down by law. So people aren't going. And even when they're open, fewer people are going to go because they're going to be worried about the spread of the virus. And so the direct consumer offering, which means streaming into their homes, is what is growing. And that's going to be the future of this entertainment stuff. I can't believe, well, I can believe, but I have to admit to you folks, as much as I said that I knew that Mulan and Tenet were going to be going to streaming in some way, shape, or form, or video on demand before the end of the year, I didn't expect Disney just to go, boom, F it, we're going to go straight to Disney Plus with it. Probably the right move, but I didn't expect them to do it that quickly. And that should be a red flag or a bellwether for everyone out there that you better just rethink the whole way you're doing business, these studios, the whole way you're doing business and distributing your films, and also the budgets of your future films. Because, well, we'll have to see. Because, you know, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that Netflix is going to invest in a $200 million movie with Ryan Gosling and Captain America, Chris Evans. So let's see how that does. I mean, if they find that that's a worthwhile investment, then this whole movie thing is going to flip. I'm surprised that I think $200 million on a streaming movie is an interesting strategy. We'll see how that goes. You know, I don't know, but we'll see. Well, that's it for Mulan. Let's go on to some We Want Judith Light news. Guess what, folks? A new iteration of Who's the Boss is in development. Yes, it's true. I know you're happy about this. Variety, where I got this blockbuster news, has confirmed that a sequel series to the classic sitcom is in the works at Sony Pictures Television, with original stars Tony Danza and Alyssa Milano on board to reprise their roles. The new show will take place 30 years after the events of the original series and be centered around the former Major League Baseball player and retired housekeeper Tony Micelli, that's Tony Danza, and his relationship with his daughter Samantha Micelli. And I think I'm pronouncing the character's name. I never watched Who's the Boss, by the way. Alyssa Milano plays Samantha Micelli, or Micelli, who is now a single mother and living in the house in which the original series was set. Original cast members Judith Light and Danny Pintoro are not currently involved with the series, but could become so if the creators can think of a creative way to work their 30-year-older characters into the show. The original Who's the Boss ran for 8 seasons and 196 episodes on ABC from 1984 to 1992. It received 10 Emmy nominations and 5 Golden Globes during its run. Norman Lear and Brent Miller will executive produce the new show under their Act 3 Productions banner, which is under a first-look deal at Sony Pictures Television. Wow. Look, I don't know, because I'm not a TV executive, but I have to believe that when they brought up the thought of, hey, let's sign Norman Lear to a first-look deal, they didn't expect Norman to come back with the Who's the Boss reboot, or it's not even a reboot, it's Who's the Boss 33 decades later. I think they wanted something a little bit more cutting edge, like All in the Family or Maude for 2020, maybe. That would have been my thinking. I would have been like, Norman, really? But anyway, they're doing it. Who's the Boss is owned by Lear's Embassy Communications, which was sold to the Coca-Cola Company in 1985 and is now owned by Sony. When the new project is taken out to buyers, they will have the option to license all the episodes of the original show as well. Now, that is a package, huh? You can get the original Who's the Boss, and we'll give you the same show, but the characters will be 30 years older in a new show. How about that? Who's the Boss is now the latest classic sitcom to get some kind of reboot or revival treatment. Other recent examples include One Day at a Time, Full House, Murphy Brown, Will and Grace, and Roseanne, now called The Conners. Okay, I know I sound very cynical and sarcastic and everything about this, and I kind of am, because as a creator, and I don't have any first look deals, and my stuff has not hit the big or small screen, okay? And I don't think that necessarily I've created anything that deserves to be up there yet. So this isn't coming from a place of bitterness. This comes from a place of disappointment in the industry. Because if you have people who know how to put on television shows like Norman Lear, and I'm not nothing against Tony Danza and Alyssa Milano, and I like Judith Light. I hope they bring Judith Light back. But if you want to make a show with all those actors, then employ a writer to write a new show for these actors who are 30 years older in different roles. And maybe that will work. This is lazy, in my opinion. Again, this is lazy. And what they're hoping for is people of my generation to come to these shows with a sense of nostalgia. And there are some people out there who will eat this stuff up because it'll remind them of when they were young. And it's just not good. That's why Murphy Brown didn't succeed and some of these others didn't succeed. Now, I was never a Roseanne fan, but I understand that Roseanne was fine until she started, whatever, hate tweeting or whatever it is she did to get kicked off that show, and the Conners are still going okay. So it can obviously work, but I do think it's just lazy television. And people can, there are enough talented writers out there who can write roles for these very talented actors because they had a successful run together. And they could do it all again. They just don't have to be the same characters in the same freaking house with some sort of absurd storyline that makes it all make sense. I don't know. That's just me. Anyway, for those of you who are fans of Who's the Boss and wanted some more, it's going to be coming if they can pull this off, because they still have to sell the show, as they said, to somebody who wants the new Who's the Boss and the leftover Who's the Boss too. So look for that, and I'll let you know when it shows up if you care. Also, email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com if you are a fan of One Day at a Time. Not One Day at a Time. Who's the Boss? I'm getting them all confused now. Of Who's the Boss? Let me know what you think and why you're a fan and why you're excited to hear about this development. Next, I have some breaking news that I'm not going to tell you about. Just show up for it because I don't know if I'm waiting to get a call to confirm what I just heard. And so I can't say it, but just come back if it's going to be worth it. Here's a message from our sponsor. We'll be back in a moment. Thanks for listening. All right. This is it, Jack. You good? All right. We had a lot of stuff that just came over the wire over the last few hours. So I'm going to finish up the show mostly focusing on NBC Universal because most of this news has to do with them. NBC Universal's Peacock announced that all 8 Harry Potter films will be available to stream in Windows starting later this year and rolling into 2021, including on Peacock's free ad-supported tier. Oh, by the way, I still haven't signed up for Peacock. I'm going to do the ad-supported tier because I don't foresee watching it a lot. And I mentioned on this podcast before, I have Hulu in an ad-supported tier, and it doesn't bother me. At least the way Hulu runs it. The ads aren't evasive, and it's not a bad price to pay to get it free. Now, I got it free through Sprint. I don't think you can just sign up for Hulu directly with the ad-supported tier. The octet of movies, those are the 8 Harry Potter films based on J.K. Rowling's famed fantasy book series, is set to roll off of HBO Max as of August 25th. I mentioned that on this podcast before, after Warner Media had carved out a 3-month window for the popular franchise following its launch. Now, while it was good for HBO Max to have, say they had Harry Potter when they launched, I don't think losing it is a big deal. And I mentioned this before in a previous show. As beloved as the Harry Potter franchise is, I am of the belief that most people who love it that much, because of the way media was distributed during the lion's share of these 8 movies, most of them ended up going to Blu-ray and DVD, and those people who really like Harry Potter that much have it. So I don't know if anyone's going to necessarily join any streaming service now because they have the bulk of the Harry Potter movies. It would always be nice to go to if you're a Harry Potter person, but I don't know if it's going to attract anybody particularly to sign up. It's decent for NBC to have it on Peacock if they're going to use it on their free service as well, though. I think people will sign up for the free service to get Harry Potter. I don't know if they'll pay for it. In 2016, NBCU inked a deal with Warner Brothers, locking up TV and digital rights to the Potter movies, including Fantastic Beasts, from 2018 to 2025. That also incorporated content for Universal theme parks, because they have those Harry Potter rides. Here's a quote. The Harry Potter franchise is beloved by people of all ages and represents the caliber of quality entertainment customers can expect to find on Peacock, said Frances Manfredi, Peacock's president of content acquisition and strategy, in a statement. She continues, we've built a world-class collection of iconic movies and shows, and we will continue to expand the film library with treasured titles from NBC Universal and beyond that will surprise and delight Peacock customers time and time again, end quote. Starting in October, Peacock customers will be able to stream Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, and Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2. The 8 films, released between 2001 and 2011, rank as the 3rd highest grossing movie franchise in history with a worldwide haul of $7.7 billion behind Disney's Marvel and Star Wars. Peacock launched nationwide in the U.S. on July 15th, but a number of the big movies on the streaming service rolled off the service in a matter of days or weeks. Those titles, which seemingly aimed at attracting users to the fledgling streamer, included the original 2009 Fast and Furious and the comedy Evan Almighty, Shrek, and the trio of Universal's Jurassic Park movies and all 3 of Warner Brothers' Matrix movies. As part of Comcast's second quarter 2020 earnings announcement last week, the company touted that Peacock landed 10 million signups since it debuted in April for Comcast Infinity and Flex customers and on July 15th nationally. But NBCU CEO Jeff Shell didn't break down what that means in terms of paid subscribers versus free viewers or how many actively monthly viewers Peacock has, saying it was too early to determine. Well, let me tell you, I would just fancy to guess that most of them right now are on the free service, over 50%, meaning that's what I mean by most. Now, Comcast says that they foresee investing $2 billion in Peacock over 2020 and 2021, with the service expected to break even in 2024. For now, Peacock, like HBO Max, is unavailable on Roku or Amazon's Fire TV platforms as the companies remain at an impasse over distribution terms. Okay, see, now I have a Fire Cube, and I, access my Netflix account and my Hulu account through those when I watch my television down, my living room television, my big television. However, when I want to watch HBO Max, I have to stream that on my computer because, as they just said, I can't get that through Amazon Fire. So when that happens, and I anticipate it will, that will be the day I cut my cord for sure. Right now I can watch HBO on that set through cable. I have Verizon Fios, but I am looking toward changing, getting up to date, and streaming, and I think most people are. So that's the deal with Peacock there. I do think that most people have Peacock on the free service, and I'm encouraged to see that Comcast plans to invest $2 billion in Peacock because, as I've preached on this podcast all the time, you need original content. So, I don't know what that original content is that they're going to put on Peacock, if in fact that's what they're going to invest the $2 billion in. I would imagine they are. But if they make some good choices, Peacock should be able to hang in there if they're not dragged down by those Universal theme parks. Here is some high fidelity news. The show High Fidelity, starring Zoe Kravitz, has been canceled by Hulu after one season. The series was a gender-bending modern reimagining of the 2000 film starring John Cusack, with Kravitz playing his role. She starred as Rob, a pop culture-obsessed owner of a record store. Jake Lacey, Divine Joy Randolph, and David H. Holmes rounded out the cast of the one season, which was critically praised. Originally ordered to series more than 2 years ago, High Fidelity was initially being developed as a Disney Plus show. However, it moved to Hulu in April of 2019 after Disney took control of the competing streaming site. The adult themes in the series made it a better fit for Hulu than the typically PG-focused, family-friendly shows on Disney Plus. Now, High Fidelity ran in Kravitz's family. Her mother, Lisa Bonet, starred alongside Cusack in the original film. She played Marie DeSalle, the ex-girlfriend of Cusack's Rob. In June, Kravitz told Variety, and that's who originally reported the story, said that she'd love to do a second season, saying that the series had more to explore with its characters and storylines, but she hadn't heard about any decision to renew the show. Here's a quote, "I think the show has a lot of potential," she says. "I think there's a lot more growing to do for everyone and a lot more trouble to get into. There's a lot of places we could go, and I would love to go there," end quote. Now, if you watched High Fidelity and you'd like to see it come back, please email me at podcasthour@gmail.com. I didn't watch the show at all, and I'd like to know about it. Let me know. And I'd love to read what you have to say about the show. If you were a fan of the original movie and the show, I'd like to hear how they compare. And I'll read all email on the air. And finally, let's end this podcast on the high note of this breaking news of heads starting to roll at NBC Universal. 3 E-entertainment news shows, E! News, Pop of the Morning, and In the Room, have been canceled. Now, I got this news from Variety.com also. It came in late last night. And this move comes just a year after E! Announced an expansion to its slate of entertainment news programming under veteran former Today Show producer Tammy Filler, who joined the company in April of 2019 to lead creative and production for E! News operations. The goal was to build out a secondary studio base in New York and add hours to its daily coverage. A year ago, the flagship E! News program, which launched in 1991, it's been hosted by such names as Ryan Seacrest, Juliana Rancic, and Maria Menounos, transitioned its nightly Los Angeles show to a morning program in New York. Pop of the Morning was also based in New York and featured a panel of hosts discussing the day's biggest entertainment news stories. In the Room featured interviews with celebrities and a look at their homes. Because everyone wants to know how they're living. Amid last year's move to New York were layoffs of around 20 to 25 staff who worked on the nightly E! News broadcast in LA. Filler will continue on in her current role overseeing E!'s remaining daily pop and nightly pop entertainment news programs. The cancellations will translate into layoffs within the New York-based production team, which is now fewer than 10 people. The extent of the layoffs is unclear, but a source familiar with the situation says that the company is trying to place some of those staffers in other positions within the network. That's never good. The cancellations come as E!'s parent company, NBC Universal, looks to streamline its programming and restructure internally to create more efficiencies. Okay, folks, let me tell you, all of this is because of those theme parks. Not all of it, but a big chunk of it is. That's dragging this company down. Additionally, the harsh economic impact of the coronavirus pandemic factored into E! News Pop in the Morning, In the Room being taken off the cable channels, programming slate per source. Yeah, but it wasn't because those shows, I mean, look, we're all locked in our houses. So, don't tell me that the pandemic is the reason why television shows are being canceled. They're being canceled because we can't afford to pay for them anymore because we're having to, carry all this overhead for these theme parks that nobody's going to. Moving forward, all of E's studio production will be centralized in Los Angeles. So E tried to move on up to New York, but they're going back to the West Coast. And folks, that's it for E in New York. And that's it for this episode of the GSMC Television Podcast. We're brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show. And if you can, write us a good review. It really helps. I hope you liked what you heard. That's my objective here. I want you to keep coming back. Also, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I know a lot of you tweet at me on the GSMC Television Podcast. You can also tweet me on my directly on my Twitter. My Twitter handle is FletchDC, FLETCHDC. And I love to engage with you. Remember to please email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com with any requests for the show. If there's anything you'd love me to cover or you want me to cover, I would love to do that. And I always want to hear your feedback. I read all email on the show, good or bad, as long as it's clean. And and even if it's not clean, I'll try to edit it as much as I can. But I do get sometimes that I just looks like people are putting me to the test. And and listen, if you listen to the show, I like to read your emails. So please write me. I haven't gotten one in a couple weeks and I'm beginning to get concerned. So please send me an email. Listen, I know we're in some challenging times right now. There are a lot of things going on in the world. They're a little bit crazy. But right now, what's most important, I believe, is that we're in a worldwide pandemic. So let's all try to work together and get through this together. Remember to wash your hands as often as possible. Limit your close and personal interaction with people if you can. Wear a mask if you go out of the house, if you can't socially distance. And just be safe so we can get through this and get back to normal so you all can listen to me in your cars rather than in your houses like some of you have been these past few months. But listen, that's what's important. Keep listening. Listen, have a safe and fun weekend until we meet again. Stream with care. Jack and I love you guys. Be kind to one another. And I'll meet you here next Saturday. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Television Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.